Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Priya Natarajan. I'm the current director of the Franke program in Science and the Humanities, and I'm an astrophysicist. I am just really delighted you're here. This is to really give you a warm welcome to our first convening this fall as we open up our programming for this academic year in person. And I'm really grateful that you all are here. We have a very exciting event for this evening, a wonderful, thought-provoking film by a very young, talented filmmaker, and happens to be a Yale alum as well. More about that in just a minute. First, I would like to start with thanking our benefactors, Mr. and Mrs. Richard and Barbara Franke, for their generosity in supporting us in multiple other activities at Yale. As you all know, we lost Mr. Franke this summer, and soon there will be a memorial service to honor his legacy, his contributions, and his unflagging support for many cross-disciplinary activities at Yale. As a flagship interdisciplinary program that at Yale that bridges the so-called sort of two cultures that C.P. Snow came up with in the 1950s, the sciences and the humanities. Here, we have been catalyzing intellectual collaborations across disciplinary boundaries and silos. And as every year, we are now delighted to welcome many of our young undergraduate, graduate, and postdoctoral Franke Fellows whose work actually crosses many disciplines. And before we move on to the event, I'm required to give you this notice. This event is being recorded and photographed for educational, archival, and promotional purposes, including use in print and on the internet and other forms of media. By attending this event today, you agree to the possibility of your voice or likeness captured by these means and used for such purposes without compensation to you, and hereby waive any related right of privacy or publicity. So moving on to today's program, we are screening the film Unconformity by the filmmaker Jonathan DiMaio, after which we will open up the floor to a Q&A. And we're really fortunate to have him here this evening. Jonathan, welcome back to Yale, back home. After graduating in 2009, John received Yale's Parker Huang Fellowship, which he used to help found Hispaniola, a non-profit that began as a Yale undergraduate group. Hispaniola is an education organization that works with Dominicans of Haitian descent who are at risk of statelessness, and the organization still runs a university scholarship program, which John started in 2010. And he spent the early 2010s between Boston, New York, and the Dominican Republic, working on film sets, making his own short films, and setting up programs and seeking funding for his nonprofit. His 2014 short film, Without the Ancestors, played at numerous festivals in the United States and Europe, including the Pan-African Film Festival and the Zinebi in Bilbao. And his music videos with Dominican rappers Chocola and Gimbi helped launch the duo to national prominence in DR. At the beginning of 2014, John traveled to the Mojave Desert to be in a field camp manager. Talk about the versatility and the talented Yale undergraduates, just a range of, I've been here for 20 years, and I'm still completely astounded at the multifaceted talents these young people have. So he became a camp manager, field camp manager for a geology class run by a Yale College classmate. This trip sparked an interest in land rights and geology in the West. John started traveling west to meet with geologists, ranchers, Native American tribes, and archivists. And after years of research, writing, and outreach, his work has led to this remarkable feature film, Unconformity. Along with Unconformity, John is currently in post-production on 2 short films. Hopefully, Jonathan, you will tell us a little bit more about it before the Q&A. Dying to hear more. And developing many other movies. And I think, the testimony to his talent is that not only was he just a field camp manager, but he used that experience to learn and teach us all something about the complexities of what is going on in the West. So before starting today's event, and we start with the screening of the film, I would like to mention a couple of upcoming events. So we have an ongoing Learning by Doing project for which we are soliciting videos. These are small science do-it-at-home experimental videos that you can send us that we share with kids around the world. And as part of our Understanding the Nature of Inference colloquium series, it's a virtual talk series. Professor Alexander Pissot, a distinguished professor of philosophy at Oxford, will be giving the talk on September 28th at 3 p.m. And then we have lined up for you a virtual talk by journalist Esther Honig on the sad state of agricultural degradation in a small Mexican fishing village in early November. And later on in November, we have a very exciting talk by another of our illustrious young Yale alums, the star architect James Ramsey, who is a former NASA engineer as well, and he'll be talking to us on November 10th. So many treats to come. Without further ado, let me just turn over to Jonathan's film, Unconformity. And thank you, Jonathan, for being here, and we're really looking forward to talking to you after the screening. And thanks, everyone, once again. Let's enjoy this film. Very, very moving. I sort of feel very emotional. There are many aspects about, academic life, competitiveness, and our sort of obsession with the materialist, consumerist, capitalist culture. There's just so many things that we could talk about. I just want to jumpstart the conversation and then open it up to everyone else. So what about your field trip camp? What really got you started on sort of looking at this sort of intersection of really complex but really moving, upsetting issues?
So I was in the desert for a month. Mostly during the day I was by myself because the geologists would go out to the field, and I was actually editing the film at the time, so I would edit the film and hang out with everything else in the desert. And there were lots of strange things happening because we were near 29 Palms. Mm-hmm. You would run across people, ranchers, other people out in the desert. And it was right around the time that Cliven Bundy mm-hmm. and his family violently overtook some federal property, or they weren't paying their ranching fees. So I became interested in that and wanted to learn about ranching, and I went out and met with ranchers and started hearing their stories. And the Bundys are obviously extremists, and the initial drafts of the film were more about Bundy-style people with those types of views, but it wasn't. It ended up where I wanted to go with the film because most ranchers aren't the Bundys.
Right. And I guess somewhere in there, obviously academic culture fascinates you. And so I was curious about that character of Alex. And so was there a particular person that inspired you there, or is this is like an archetype that you kind of pulled out of?
Yeah, more of an archetype, not one particular person. And I just, she's very driven and she's very focused and she's very selfish in a lot of ways throughout the film, and it's about her journey of learning not to be. But there wasn't a particular person that inspired it. But a lot of the academic culture was, and that sort of competitive nature. I had a lot of friends who were in academia after we all graduated, and hearing their stories, and then honestly my experiences in the film world and seeing how people behaved, trying to get credit, and so it was a combination of those things.
Yeah, I thought it was just beautifully done. And, anyway, I would like to open up to others and not hog Jonathan completely. So if anyone else has questions, I think there is a roving microphone, or did you want to take this one? How do we want to do this?
There was another microphone earlier, I don't know.
Can you hear me okay if I speak back?
Yeah, we can lend our microphones. Yeah. I think we're both Thank you.
I think just have people.
Stand up and speak? Okay.
Because,
We may not be able to record this, right? Or are you
oh yeah,
recording?
no, we just spin this around.
Oh,
If
okay.
you want to just have people ask the question, I'll pick it up.
Okay.
Okay. And we can hear them in the room anyways.
Anyone has a burning question? Yes.
I'm interested in the composition of it, and I guess it would be useful to hear you say more about the process, because it's a very, very visual film. You know, like the shots are very. Sorry, I'm getting used to this. And I'm glad it's being recorded. So I'm thinking about I guess your own interest in narrative and then also image, because it's, you know, it's very, like I said, it's a very visual film. There's you know, especially at the beginning stages when she's alone, the solitude, and there's a kind of transcendental insistence, kind of Edward Abbey kind of feel to it. So I'm interested in hearing you talk about where in your composing the images and your construction of images comes in. Does that come before parts of the narrative? Does it arise out of the narrative? Do you think, okay, I work through the narrative, and then when we've settled on a location, then I'll figure out the images? I mean, it doesn't have to be either or, but it would be interesting to hear like the sort of procedural rhythm, compositional rhythm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So a lot of it is you find the location and then you pick the best shot. A fair amount of it comes from that. I knew that I wanted a lot of wides, medium wides, because I wanted to show the characters in the space and I wanted people to feel that. You know, so when I met with Hannah, our director of photography, we basically sat down and planned every single shot in the film. And what happens often is you have to cut on the day, you have to cut a third of them because you don't have time. But a lot of you plan out sort of where you want to, where the camera goes, and you develop a style. You look at reference shots. I was looking at a lot of photography. I was looking at a lot of Robert Adams photography when we were in pre-production and showing those images to her and talking about them. And then also, you know, some of the footage that we got, I wasn't even there for because we had B-roll. I had a friend come out and we basically talked about the aesthetic style, and he came out with his drone and his camera, and he went out and spent a couple days just finding footage. So it's sort of a combination of those things.
Yeah, so actually I did want to follow up and ask, so was there a lot of drone use for this, or?
Yeah, and some of them are pretty obvious where you see the camera following or flying or very high in the sky, but some of it is, you know, when you have a camera on the ground in the desert, you don't really get that perspective and that deep view. And so there are a bunch of still shots where we just had the camera go up and look straight out because it just allows you to see the contours of the desert better. And you wouldn't know that it's a drone shot because usually you think drone, you think fancy helicopter style shots. And my favorite drone shot is the one when they're on the ATV and the camera just it jibs down to the fence. Because in traditional Hollywood, that shot would have cost by itself the level of the entire production budget. But with a drone, you just have a guy who's talented and he does the shot and it just opens up what you're able to do. It's really, and it reads as a jib shot, which is a technical fun shot.
But I mean, you know, as an astronomer, I can't resist asking, right? How come you didn't show the night sky? The stars, right? And they're so beautiful, right?
I know, the
in
camera.
desert.
So I just read an article about this new film by Jordan Peele, Nope, and he used a new photography method to shoot the sky. that involves infrared cameras
Camera
and
infrared.
film cameras and then superimposing them. So if we had known about that
Would
4
have done
years
it,
ago, we
yeah.
would have done it, but it wasn't in the cards.
Well, I mean, I realize it's about rocks. I mean, it's not about star space.
Yeah.
Rick?
By the way, that's what the Webb telescope does now, combines infrared and
Yeah.
regular photography. Just wanted to say, I'm not a film expert. I've known John for a long time. And in my freshman year in 1970 at the law school auditorium, I went to see All About Eve. And Joseph Mankiewicz himself was there to answer questions. And I feel like I'm in a continuum for the same thing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Who wants the catch box next?
Jonathan, it was wonderful to see it on the big screen after having seen it on the computer, and I realized that there was a lot that I missed the first time and a lot that that became clearer. I was interested in how you combined the story, the personality of the young woman, the main character, and the landscape. What came first to you? Was it the desolateness of the desert, or what was it that, because they all complement each other, obviously, but what came first when you were thinking about it, or how did you get to that creative process?
It's hard to say. I think part of it was, I went out to the desert with a friend who I met the first week at Yale, and seeing her go out into the desert and then meeting more geologists who, they just go out sometimes for a year by themselves and live in Death Valley just doing research. And of course, my experience out there was formative, being in that space. And I became interested in who does that? Who goes out there and spends time alone like that? Because it's not what most people do.
So I'm just curious, from your point of view, what do you expect the viewer to take away? Do you have an expectation? I mean, you must, right?
I don't know. I don't want people to have a specific reaction to the film. I want them to enjoy it for the reasons they enjoy it. It's a hard question to ask a filmmaker.
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't.
I know. Oops. But now that you've seen it all come together, I mean, was there a portion of the film, the shooting, the actual writing, as well as the filming, that was particularly challenging for you?
Filming in the desert on a low budget is very hard. And the biggest logistical challenge really was just the distances that, we were near a small town, but we were 20 minutes away, and we were on 2 different ranches. We're moving around the ranches with a crew and location, and just making sure everything is in the right place at the right time is hard when sometimes you don't have phone service or you don't have walkie-talkies. So that's a big challenge. And post-production, at first I hated it because it's really painful to sit with your footage and try to figure out how to make a movie out of it.
Right.
But then it becomes this really kind of amazing process where you just sort of layer in these elements and you get to see the film become what it is going to become, and it's really exciting. So that is challenging because it takes so much time. We spent 18 days in principal photography, a couple days of reshoots. I had to go back to Vegas to get some B-roll during the pandemic. But really, you're only filming for 25 days. And then you spend 2 years in an editing room, getting feedback, doing test screenings, going to festivals, and doing the music itself took over a year.
Yeah, it's hauntingly beautiful.
Connor's
really,
he's an amazing composer. It was that was an incredible process too, because we would get on a call and just talk about what instrumentation to use, what to do, and we were on a call together when the Capitol was stormed. So every January 6th now, Connor and I have a reunion call to commemorate that, because we just stopped working and watched the news together. So,
Any other questions? There's a question in the back.
How did you find the actors?
We worked with the casting director. So through one of our producers, put us in touch with a casting director who was quite good, and through sort of a series of events. We weren't going to work with her, but then she ended up being on the project, and it just opened doors for us in terms of getting people that were good, because she was very well respected. And so, it's a very low budget film, and so agents obviously are asking for more and more money, but she was basically able to say, look, this is the project, this is how much money they have, do you want to be in it? And really helped that process.
This.
The
Guess next.
the casting was wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everybody was extremely believable in their part. I was very taken by the father.
Yeah.
He could have been a one-dimensional kind of rancher type, but he brought out many different parts of him, and he had a very expressive face.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeremy is a fantastic actor. He's often plays security guard types on TV shows. People recognize him, but he's got an incredible range. And he's also very fun to have on set. The first week, we were only working with Jack and Alex, the two young actors, and that's earlier movies for them. They haven't done very much, and everyone was kind of nervous. And Jeremy came the second week and was just like rolling around in the dirt and making dad jokes, and everyone kind of loosened up. And so he was a lot of fun to have around, and it was great.
Jonathan, it's also my second time watching this, and I noticed a lot of things this time. I want to really congratulate you on all the breathing space you gave this movie. Visually and in the dialogue and in the music, there's just a lot of, not silence, but slow down or spaces. It just, and they spoke a lot to the plot, and that was my second, actually more my question was how you came up with such a great plot. Was this something that kind of came to you at once, or did it develop after you started a little bit? It's a fairly intricate plot, but it's very very clear and very interesting, and it's like you have a literary flair, but totally in film.
So there were lots of iterations, there were lots of drafts, different storylines that were completely different than this. And I even ended up doing a pretty large rewrite 4 months before we filmed. You just have to sort of test it out. And a lot of you look at, you study other movies, you study other scripts, you see what works in similar genres or styles. So a lot of it is sort of copying the masters to a certain extent and just putting it into new places and testing things out. And having good readers, people that are screenwriters and filmmakers. And honestly, often the best notes come from actors because they're so attuned to character. So you just want to be open to feedback and be ready to kill your darlings because you just have to make the script work.
Just a brief question. I was very impressed by the accuracy and the detail of the geology facts. Any response from the geology community about these discoveries and things? Or?
The geologists are mostly enjoying it very much, which is exciting. Recently on Twitter, I saw someone post a checklist of all the geology activities that they got to see in the film. So they're enjoying it. They approve for the most part. And they're interested in the story about sort of plagiarism and bullying in academia. That's not a reaction I was expecting, but people are really interested in that and want to talk about that because it's things that people have experienced. So there's a lot of interest in that.
I think we have time for one more question because they expect us to get out of the room by 6.
Hi, so first thank you for the film. I have zero academic cinema training, but I'm a big Western fan, and I guess the analogy here is not lost. It's the setting, it's the saving the family ranch plot line. I guess Alex is trying to save her academic range. I was wondering how you sort of tie a film like this together, where usually one expects some conflict between protagonist and the villain, and here the conflict, at least to me, and especially for an academic trying to do science, the conflict is not really against anybody, except minor plagiarism in the beginning. There isn't really any bad person to contrast against with. So I was sort of interested in how that's sort of weaved together to generate conflict against Mother Nature, or...
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and it's a movie in part about the climate crisis and about extinction events,
Yep.
both big and small, very old and somewhat new. So I think that sort of provides some of the context there for the conflict, and for Eddie's character, Jason Lowry, to also provide that sort of push to the ranchers, which is a very difficult to do, because a lot of the dialogue I didn't, you would talk to BLM, Bureau of Land Management, range cons, or you talk to ranchers, and they were often talking past each other, but trying to help each other in certain ways as well. And so there was a natural conflict there, but I really didn't want to make anyone out. It's more complex than good and bad, and I wanted to try to show that complexity with some of that conflict.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually I thought you succeeded beautifully, because there was this tension without an allusion to black and white, and I think I caught the backdrop. I mean, I liked the ancient extinction event, and the contrast with the current struggle, and the way that you showed, the BLM character. At the end of the day, we are all in this potential extinction event together, and sort of a certain kind of truce. I actually liked that tension. I liked the fact that you started off with that plagiarism thing, and then that you were done with it. That sort of went away, but that whiff was throughout the film, right? I mean, that sort of carried on. So I actually liked the fact, and I sensed sort of tension and conflict, not so much between good and bad, but between almost like thriving and survival. Academic thriving, what it takes, and then it's like down to survival. And I thought that those tensions were really, really well done. So
Thank you.
it was. I mean, I'm stunned that I was going to ask you. You've not been in a PhD program, right?
No.
And so I was pretty stunned at the sort of the layers that you managed to get at. So if there are no further questions, let's all thank Jonathan again for a fantastic film. And to many, many more.
Thank you.
Yes. And thank you so much for coming today.
Of course.